Oh, I don't have a dance. Maybe I could do a square dance or something. What a thrill it is to be here. But let me put my life in context. My parents are Dutch immigrants. They came to Canada in '51. I'm the middle child. My father had a heart attack when he was 43. I was 11. Talk about crises. They really change people's lives. I was so lucky to have a couple of crises in my life that really helped me determine the direction that I took. But here's a story. So he's 42. He's got 5 kids. The youngest is 2. We live on a farm. A lot of labor in the farm. How do you get the labor out of the farm? Because the kids got to help him milk the cows, bring in the hay. So he started thinking. He had a very serious heart attack, and the doctors told him he should give up the farm. And the kids decided that they could run it. But he did something really interesting. This was in the early 60s. And he said, look, how am I going to get the labor out of, and how can I get my cost out of the farm? How do I improve the profitability of the farm? And so he built a what I call a cow toilet at one end of the farm, of the barn. Great big toilet, filled it with water, and down the gutters, we would release the water, and we would sweep the shit right into a great big tank in front of the barn, and he would stir that up, and he was the first dairy farmer to do liquid manure in all of Nova Scotia. The Farm Loan Board wouldn't give him any money because, this didn't make any sense, and the fertilizer companies were really pissed off because it was going to be reducing the sale of their product. And that's where I learned my first, how to make money and how to be sustainable at such a young age. And if we could just roll this along so I know where I'm going. Thank you. Moving along, my first job was a little story. I have had 4 operations on my kidneys. I was in hospital for 6 months. Another crisis that really helped me focus on recognizing that my life is so generous to me, and I have every day of my life woken up to be happy to be alive. And when you've got an attitude like that, that's natural. It's just a lot easier to get through life, to get through the difficult things. So my first job was in the coal mining business in Cape Breton. First started industrial development and then coal mining. But we came from a very tough community, Cape Breton, right? You remember the steel plants and the coal mines, and it was tough. Unemployment was always around 20%. So bunch of us, I was 20 years old, we got together and we put this community organization together called Vision. And our vision was to, make our municipality more productive. And there were 7 municipalities then. There were 7 fire departments. There were the inefficiencies that we saw, and we couldn't attract. No one could decide on anything. Everybody was fighting amongst themselves, so we couldn't make decisions on ports and things like that. So anyway, that was my first experience in municipal policy, right? And about 20 years later, those municipalities did get together, but it helped me understand how critical and important my job was. Yes, I had to work for a living, but yes, I had to give back to my community. And it started when my parents instilled in me that they came to a country that had land that was free, that had a democracy that was envied amongst the world. And I'll tell you, I have lived that all of my life. So I worked with my church sponsored a Vietnamese family. When I was 22, 23, I was the treasurer, trying to do the fundraising for that, and that community was really tough. But, Trung Le is in Kitchener, Ontario now, couldn't afford to stay in Cape Breton, but he and his family came to Cape Breton, and I had the privilege of fostering and adopting a family to come to our country, and they have been so successful. So I worked for quite some time in that coal mining company, 9 years as a matter of fact. But I was very frustrated. I just couldn't get ahead. I couldn't get people to see my perspective. I wanted more. And I learned how companies shouldn't be run. So, and that was a Crown Corporation. So my next job, a transforming moment, and you'll hear transforming moments throughout my speech today. I was so convinced that governments couldn't run companies. I went and worked for CDIC, which was Crown Corporation that was privatizing Crown Corporations. And I did that for 3 years because I was so convinced from a policy perspective, governments could not run companies. That was so clear to me. And so did that for 3 years. It was a great experience, really was. And around that time, I met a guy, even in Cape Breton, I met a guy by the name of Purdy Crawford. Some of you know Purdy Crawford. Purdy Crawford is one of the most beautiful people, smartest people, empathetic people in the world. He saw my potential when I made a presentation to the board of directors when I was 27 years old. I put together a long-term plan for the Cape Breton Development Corporation. And I was with my president and my CFO. And Purdy kept asking me the questions, and my answers were quite frankly better than theirs. But he recognized he recognized that I had potential. And so came to Toronto. I remember being on Bay, and I wasn't up an escalator till I was 29 years old. Now think of that just for a minute, huh? I mean, I didn't get around. I was in rural Cape Breton. But I've made up for it, let me tell you. But I really started in the Crown Corporation selling companies, and Purdy approached me, said, "Look, come to Montreal, be vice president of corporate development. Need someone to really take a look at the Genstar assets." And so I did that for 2.5 years. But I made a deal with him, and I make a deal with everybody, right? I always know what I'm going into because I think. If you don't, you get lost. So I said, women get stuck in administrative positions, and I want to get into an operating position. Help me get into an operational position. And within 2 years, I became the director of operations for the Den for Men. Now, how many people know the Den for Men? Are there any? A few people? Yeah. A brilliant concept, right? An easy concept. So anyway, you know me, I figured I'm going to do a deal with Brookstone, bring Brookstone to Canada. I thought it was a brilliant idea. They didn't, because it meant having to close 11 stores. Anyway, I left the company, disappointed that I couldn't get my views across. The Denver Men went under within 12 months. And, but I went ahead and started my own company called Verschuren Ventures. Because I was smitten by the retail industry. I saw that it had enormous opportunities and advantages. And again, another change. I change all the time. I've been in 5 different industries. But retail was interesting, fun, and I saw potential. I identified 5 companies that I thought should come to Canada, underrepresented here, and honest to God, I did this. I went to New York, went to a retail conference. I knew some people at the retail conference. I went up to the CEO of Michael's, the arts and crafts store. Jack Bush was his name. I said, "Hello, my name's Annette Verschuren. I'm a Canadian. I think there's a big opportunity in the craft business in Canada, and I would like to be your partner and start opening stores there." The guy looks at me like, and I waited, and he said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. You've got to take a look at Canada." And 3 weeks later, took it to the board, opened 17 stores in 26 months with Michael's. It was a thrill. Yeah. Because one thing I do is that I do. I love talkers, but if talkers don't do, I don't get that impressed. But I really think it's important, but it's not about me doing. I had 1,000 employees that were engaged, that owned this business. I have always believed that the success of companies, of organizations, has so little to do with their leader. Yes, the leader needs to set the stage. Yes, the leader needs to manage the culture. But if you can't get the engagement out of the wonderful human resources that you have around you, it ain't ever going to work. During that time, I was on the council of the National Science and Technology Council, and I was always doing something for Canada all through my career, and that was a thrill. I was young. We went to Washington a bunch of times. I didn't know what we contributed, but we did get into the Franklin Room in the White House and did have some talks with our counterparts in the U.S. I was always extraordinarily inquisitive, always wanted to find better ways of doing things, find ways in which things we could make the environment better, the productivity better, the profitability better. And for me, they always went hand in hand. I have always felt prosperity and sustainability to go hand in hand. These aren't separate things. They are things that you do together. And then came along Home Depot. So I was president of Home Depot for 15 years, 19 stores to 179 stores. I planned the 180th store, and that's how many stores are open in Canada. And I saw social responsibility at work. When I arrived at Home Depot, we had First Nations people hanging from chains in our stores. There was a real. You remember the issues associated with lumber and forest management practices, and the Brazil challenges, and many countries that were really exploiting their forests. So I became the chair of the Environmental Council of the Home Depot, U.S. International. And what an experience that was. And so my job was to try to help the company, get people off chains and off the tops of our buildings. But we really got close to NGOs. We got close to our vendor community. We used our purchasing power to change the way we purchase product. And we started with, for the first year, we'll start with 10% Forestry Steward Council product, FSC product. And that's how we did it. And we taught vendors how to change their ways, how to choose their product from more sustainable environments. And it was an extraordinarily exciting, positive time in my life. Another example of, social and economic, how do they fit together? So Habitat for Humanity. So I'm in the back rooms of one of my stores, and one of the guy says, "Annette, why are we throwing, this cabinet in the compactor? Why isn't there a way that we can turn around and give this product to people that need it?" And so one of the proudest things I have, and so I got very involved with Habitat for Humanity, thought it was a great organization, but as importantly, got my company involved. And so we contributed then product that we would normally throw out down the compactor. We would give to the local restores at Habitat for Humanity. We started with, 5 restores or 2 restores, but there are 90 restores, and these are retail stores that sell this product that would normally be in the landfill sites, right? And from that money, new houses are built. And I think it's just, to me, making money, doing things right, hand in hand, right? To me, it's very simple. Those experiences at Home Depot were amazing. And there are other social experiences that were really challenging to me too. Do you guys remember Tent City? Well, Tent City was sitting on the land owned by Home Depot. Yes. And that in terms of trying to protect the brand and trying to deal with this issue was amazing. I can't get over those moments when you had to make a big decision. There were 100 people on this 10 acres of land. It really became a place that was quite dangerous. Drugs were being traded. There were real problems. There was a point where we were afraid that someone was going to be killed. And this sort of situation just grew naturally. And so I tried to do everything. I was going to build a transition house there. Couldn't get anything done. Anyway, had to make the decision to take those wonderful people off that property. And 103, and they all have their houses, and all their, and it didn't matter. For me, it had to be done right. So we had to go in, take those wonderful people out, give them homes, and we had a place for everyone to stay. We took all of their belongings, we held it on for 6 months so that they could pick up anything they wanted, and we had no discrimination of what was important and what wasn't. And I'll tell you, we survived that experience because we cared about people. I had a lot of good people engaged in the decisions. I saw that the homeless issue was an extraordinarily difficult issue to deal with. But I'll tell you, the way it was handled, the experience that I had during that time was, really changed my life, really changed who I am. And the other thing I discovered is employees love to do good. We introduced an eco options program. So we had 1,500 products that we found that were either, recycled product, they were energy efficient product, they were, improvement in water filtration, all those things. And so we gave the customer a choice. We didn't say, you buy that. We say, look, here is 5 products on the shelf. This is the one that's greener. This is the one that will, be better in terms of air, water, energy, etc. It's amazing what that created. The sales of those products were always about 10% higher than other products. So again, it was a way to help out. During that time, too, I was on the North American Competitiveness Council, and this was at the time when President Bush, Vincent Fox, and Prime Minister Harper put together this, well, maybe it was the other Prime Minister, but anyway, but at the time when we went down, it was with Prime Minister Harper. But anyway, I was one of 5 or 6 people that were sitting around the table, and we're talking about, trade. I'm a big proponent of trade. I really think the prosperity of our country will get better if we have more open markets. I really do, and it will make us, we have much greater capacity than we think we do as a country. And to some degree, I think, because we are not, we have it pretty easy, that I think there are opportunities for all of us. But I remember sitting around that table, and I said to I pointed this to George Bush, and I said, Mr. President, I come from Canada. I work in a company that operates in Mexico, the United States, and Canada. We got real problems getting lumber across the border, softwood lumber. And I think you personally have to get involved in this because it's been going on for 5 or 6 years. I think that the Prime Minister looked at me, I think he was in total shock that I did this. But you know what? 3 days later, and it wasn't just, there was a whole bunch of people working on this, but 3 days later that lumber issue got solved. And so, again, I wanted to improve the performance of my business, and I wanted to help the country, I think, push the right policy. The other thing that was really cool, during the 2008-2009 crisis, Minister Flaherty invited me and 10 other people on an economic advisory board to help respond to the recession, the crisis that was happening. And so we had to look at short-term stimulus and longer-term stimulus. And so we were sitting around the table and we said, what about a home improvement tax credit? That way people would start doing things in their home, not worry so much about the recession. Industry could start producing product and sales would come up, and then when the longer-term projects would come on, that were infrastructure projects, that would be terrific. So anyway, the outcome, I think, was good, and I think it helped the country respond to the futures. I co-chaired with the Governor General, the Governor General's Canadian Leadership Conference. I was with him for 3 years. He is the most dynamic person. I learned so much And I always learn way more than I give in every situation that I'm in. And because I believe listening is such an important skill. And listening is not just trying to back up what you believe. Listening is genuinely, letting it go and having the courage to see that you can look at things differently. And there are different ways to approach things. And there are different ways to respond to things, different ways to do things. Can we just move that along a little bit? Okay. In 2011, growth was pretty well done. I also was involved with China, opening China 2006, 2009 with the Home Depot. What an experience that was. Oh my God. Living and operating, I'm still running Canada, but living and operating in a different culture was extraordinary. So what happens? I go around, I say, in retail, you work 24/7. So I took some time off, and I said, my husband and I went around the world, and we had a bucket list, 17 countries. And we went to 17 countries in a year. Still have a few things to do at home, but we just went. I never took time off after university. I just needed a break. And look, the three things, and Dominic brought them up: food, water, and energy. Big solutions, big requirements. And there are a bunch of opportunities for me to go back in retail, but I just didn't see the benefit of that. I mean, why do something that you've already done? So, good friend, David Patterson, president of Northwater, one of the biggest venture capital companies in the country, he and I sat down. He said, Annette, look, I really think energy storage is going to be a big part of the future. The renewable energy that is being put on the grid today is not being captured. And if we could take the wind when it blows at night, hold on to it, and put it on the grid when the demand is there, if we could take the solar and any excess solar, hold on to it, and deliver it when the demand is there, can you imagine what we could do to change the industry? So that's what I'm doing now. Always looking for where the puck's going, always trying to understand emerging trends, trying to see where things are going. So at the end of March of this year, I will be the proud owner of the first installation of flywheel technology produced here in Canada by Temporal Power, but we are commissioning a 2-megawatt flywheel technology, and it basically absorbs very quickly frequency regulation, takes in and releases, so it manages the electricity to smooth it out and improve the quality on the grid with a lot more of intermittent energy that comes on stream. So we're opening that, and we're bidding on a lot of, we very, very much influenced the government to recognize they needed more energy storage in this province particularly, and the government just announced 50 megawatts of additional energy storage, and so we're working hard to develop more products that way. Can you just go back a little bit? So I reinvent myself regularly. I do. And I think that's what keeps me young. Someone said people think was it Moses that said people think they're 12 years younger than they are? Well, I think I'm about 30 years younger than I am. And I want to keep believing that. I really do. I believe the best for-profit and non-for-profit organizations get people engaged in making decisions in their institutions. And I found it so interesting talking about institutions. I'm in another company today, and I sit around a table with 5 of us, and it's an open concept, and I don't do performance reviews. I don't do stuff that I was trained to do for many, many years. And there's all kinds of different ways to do things differently. And I'm being taught about technology and digitization more than anything I've ever experienced in my life, because I believe that I'm allowing myself to and creating myself to. And I think, as we heard today, the old ways don't work so well anymore. we need to really rethink our institutions. When you think that our parliament was built 150 years ago, and the Franklin description that Dominic had, can you imagine what Sir John A. would see? Yeah, he would see an enormous amount of communication, with iPhones and iPads and everything else. But he'd see the same institutions. And I think institutions need to change. I really do. I think we are too slow to make change. And if there's any evidence from this morning, it's very clear how fast things are changing. Just to summarize, advice I would give for profit, non-for-profit, and for profitable institutions, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of similarities. You have clients, you've got customers. You're trying to match the needs. You're trying to provide and develop a package of goods. In the case of fundraising and charity, a package of goods to serve a certain customer. The reason I'm on the CAMH board is that in my family, there has been mental health. Quite frankly, in every family there's been mental health. But in every family there's been mental health. And I've got a sister that is the most amazing sister in the world. Her name's Dorothy. And Dorothy went through a really tough time. She really did. She had a nervous breakdown. She came back 2 times in Nova Scotia, became the teacher of the year, was principal of a high school, and then was developer of curriculum for a number of years. And so I see what struggle and challenges mental health has, the impact it has. And I am not afraid to talk about it. I'm not, I never was. She's not either. And mental health is a bigger issue than physical health. It is one of the biggest challenges we have in our society, everybody. We don't talk about it enough. But if we want to get productivity out of the Zoomers, if we want to improve the performance of our countries and performance of everybody in terms of our countries, we've got to talk about this issue more and solve it. I think non-for-profits need to simplify their messages. I think they need to demonstrate to their funders that they deserve their support. And I think big data is really, really an important factor. I think ignoring it is nuts. I think understanding and not being threatened by it is so critical. Gathering that, the GE Health stuff that you presented, that's exactly what all the big problems in the world need to be solved that way. We need to listen, not just to a few that think they're leaders. We need to listen to everybody to solve the big problems of our country, of our countries. I think responsibility needs to go hand in hand in running your business. Just to summarize, can you get me on the last sort of notes here? It's not about making money versus, you went too fast, that's okay. Okay. I just like to control my thoughts. I'm already finished, but I'm just going to finish up by, why can't Canada be a world leader in prosperity and sustainability? I mean, I'm so tired of the discussion of energy versus environmentalists. I am, come on. We can't get rid of our energy. We got to make it more productive, cleaner, and that's every form of energy, whether it's oil, gas, coal. I mean, we've got to think differently about how we have to move the needle. And I'm a big supporter of renewable energy, but I'm also someone that recognizes that you have to move your country forward. And I think Canada can be the world energy leader, the world energy clean leader. I really do, if we put our minds to it. I think, my time in China impressed me because of their patience. They look at things in the longer term. My time at Cape Breton University with David Wheeler has taught me a lot about our First Nations people. First Nations people think differently than we do. And you know what? They've been here 21 generations, and all of us sitting in this room have been here 7. Big difference. Big difference. I think they have got some answers that we're not listening to. But look, I just want to end by saying I am enthusiastic about our future. I really am. I think that there is so much to do. I think you in this room play such an extraordinarily important role. I think the charitable organizations, the non-for-profit organizations are in a point in time where they are going to be really going to be taking a bigger role in terms of how society's run. And that is just wonderful news for everybody. Anyway, I think I'll end right now because my partner, Daryl, is ready to take me off the stage. But thank you, everybody.